Welcome to the Toronto International Film Festival and this very special conversation with the director Gian Cassini for the world premiere of Comala. Gian, thank you very much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Tom, for making me part of this experience.
So, for viewers watching at home, I should acknowledge that this year's festival is a strange one in many ways. The way everything during this pandemic is strange, but one of the heartbreaking things for us is that there are some directors who are not able to be in Toronto for their world premiere with all the different protocols around COVID, and Gian is one of those. Who is going to be experiencing this from his home in Mexico. So I want to, again, Gian, make you feel welcome and just express our appreciation for you sharing your film with us.
Thank you, Tom.
So let me start by asking, what gave you the push to make this film? I mean, we can see in the film ways in which it must have been therapeutic for you to go on this journey, but we can also easily imagine, ways in which you might have been, intimidated or unsure of how to proceed on this journey. So, what was it that that gave you that push to turn this into a film?
Well, I think the first thing was the context that I was living back there, and I think, well, not only myself, but most of the population of the Mexican people. We need to think that back then in 2012, that was when I started, we could say that we felt that we were going out of this stage of violence that the country started living in 2006 under the war against narco traffic. And it was on a stage and an event that I think that it marked my generation. So because we have never experienced something like that in our lives, and being exposed to all that violence at any time of the day, all days, I think that it was something really strong. And besides of that, a lot of young people of my age were being killed. Promising boys, promising women were being killed at any time of the hour, any day. So I think that has a strong impact on me and people from my generation. And also, I think, well, I reconnected with my family back then in 2012 after 5 years of not seeing them. And in the middle of that, my father was killed in 2010. So being with them and see all what he left in each one of them, personally, I think that it was really moving. But also, I saw all what I usually see in the media, in the newspapers about violence. I could see a few things that I felt that it was like the root of those public events, but in this micro universe in my family. So I felt that it was like really interesting to explore all these subjects, but through this micro universe, familiar universe. And for me, that was really fascinating. And I was very naive when I started, because I thought that, yes, my family is going to be want to be part of this from the beginning, and they're going to see the same potential that I see in this. And obviously, well, it didn't happen, right? I mean, I needed to do a lot of job to convince them and to explain to them what was the project that I had in my head. So, yeah.
So I wonder if you could elaborate on what some of those challenges were. Once you set off on this journey, what were some of the biggest difficulties in accomplishing it?
Well, this is my first documentary, so we can start from that. And I knew nothing about documentaries. I mean, this is going to be funny, but I was teaching documentary in the university, but I truly knew nothing. So I think that, well, that was a challenge, because I learned through all this journey, through all these years, all the possibilities in how you can structure and film a documentary, right? That was one of them, I think. And well, and that also provoke, let's say, a lot of frustration, because during the first 4 years, I didn't see a beginning and an ending. I was just shooting, 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 and I was making some rough cuts, but I couldn't see a piece in there. And the other one was that I started this film without fundings, so most of the fundings came from my own pocket. So that made the film, the production, like very long. I mean, a few long, because I had to pay my journey, my trips to Tijuana and to other places. So like I did that like 2 times a year maybe. So I could have wished that the production advanced like more quickly, but no. And I think that other one was like, yes, in the personal stage, like dealing with this personal discovering that I was doing, but also like meeting my family, because I was seeing them from another perspective. Like I stopped to just being there to to become an observer. And I think that was a difficulty, because you see things that you didn't see before, or that maybe you see, but you don't analyze them. So you start to analyze them, and it creates like this impact on you, in which you don't know, like, if you want to keep learning more. And and well, but you say like, well, but I'm here already, and I just already been here for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, so I'm not going to stop now. So I think that that was another difficulty. And
Gian, let me ask you this, because lots of people who watch this film, inevitably are going to think about their own family relationships, and most of us don't have something as dramatic as as a killer in our family. Um, but most of us, experience some version of family dysfunction, and most of us have tough questions that we would like to ask members of our family, and usually don't, because it's a hard thing to go through, and most of us don't have the kind of excuse of a camera, which I think can sometimes facilitate those conversations rather than just trying to talk over the kitchen table. I wonder what you learned about having hard conversations with your family that other people could learn from.
well, I think that something that was really useful is that I think that most of my family, and even myself, we have a strong character. I mean, we try to be very honest with each other. We are not pleasable, saying like that. So I think that we all are aware of who we are and how we develop. So I think that that made things easier. But in case I'm going to give an example that you are very aware of, that relationship with with my grandfather, because he was a newcomer in my life. So that was really interesting, because I just met him because of the film. So how I approached to him, I I try to be very respectful. I try to adapt in some ways of what he was expecting from me. But and then starting from that, I start to build this trust, and also like to see that I was harmless. So when I won his confidence and in his family, I think that I also needed to them to see me as I am in some point. Like, hey, um, I'm not what you expect me to be, but I am this person. I have this life in Mexico. I do this, I do that, and I think that I won not also their trust, but their respect, and that allowed me also, like, in the moment of approaching them with some questions, that opened the door, because I think that they felt trust and some admiration for me. So I think that my advice to all of you that want to create that communication and that tie with your own families. Like, just be yourself, and show them who you really are, and not just try to please them, because I think that that's going to make things easier in communicate and in the bounds that you create with each one of them.
At first glance, this film, someone might describe as a film about men in your family, but the women in this film are, just as important, and going through their own interesting journeys. And I wonder if you can reflect on what you learned from the women in the film.
Well, that's a very interesting point, because, as you mentioned, one could think that this is a film about men, but I think that it's a film about men and women. And I think that women are more important, even because the context in which the film develops, it's a context of women, because we all of our characters grow in a matriarchal structure. So I've been really aware since my childhood that my education came from women, and so I have a lot of respect for them. I have a deep connection to them, and even though that I'm still learning a few things about what can you say to a woman and what you don't, um, I think that I was quite aware of the impact that they had on me, and I tried to show that in the film. I tried to be respectful. I mean, because I couldn't be honest if I will deny that. So what do I learn from them? I learned that the economical and social positions that our governments and their institutions offer are not enough in the support from them, because if I can compare to the United States, that we have a special tie there, because Tijuana is just next to San Diego, or to California, let's say it, and I see that the conditions of support to single mothers are, maybe some people in the United States will say that are not the proper ones, but they are much, much, much better than the supports that single mother receives here in Mexico. And I think that can make a change, a true change in a lot of things. I mean, giving education to their kids, giving them opportunities, giving a good life quality, giving them a good education. And unfortunately, they cannot afford that. I mean, my grandmother said at what point that she rejects the facts that she wasn't there with my father when he was a child, because she needed to work constantly. So I think that that's something that I learned from that. I think that also one thing that I learned is that I cannot judge them. I think that in the past I had some resentment because of the conditions in which I grow, and in what they couldn't offer me on my childhood. But with the time, and I think that thanks to the film and to the conversations that I had, I just understood, and so now that I see that my nephews, for instance, are having the same conditions, it's like, well, we need to do a lot, but also, if a mother it's not able to be there, it's not going to be the end of the world if you understand why she is not there.
Yeah, I understand. You've got a couple of your key collaborators who are backstage of our virtual screen here. I'd like to bring on your editor and one of your producers, not your editor, your cinematographer, and one of your producers. We'll have our team bring them on. So, Gian, can you introduce these folks and describe their role in the film?
For sure. Here is Gabriel Guzman. He is the producer of the film, one of the two producers. And Gabriel came on board when I was in the middle of the process of production. And he and his company, Imagix Entertainment, were really excited to be on board, and they support me a lot during all these last stage that were, even though there were a lot, 5 years. And we came and we worked together for getting the funds for finish the film. And the other collaborator here is Ivan Garcia. I like to call. I'm gonna call him. I'm gonna start calling him camera person because we recently got introduced to Kirsten Johnson and who loved the film, and she said that I mean, from her perspective, that she loved and she could see the dynamic that Ivan and I had. So she herself, the camera person itself, called him camera person. So I think I'm gonna call him like that because he truly is. He was with me during all this journey, and well, here is Doña Ede. She's at the office cleaning. Diga hola, Doña Ede. But well, going back to Ivan, uh, well, I couldn't find a better partner to go on this trip. He was our camera person, and something that I admired very much about working with Ivan is that he was so sensitive to all of the to understand the characters. I mean, I like to call them characters, even though it's my family. So he got really well related with each one of them, and I felt really secure that at the end of the day, we had our own talks about what we learned from each situation that we were experiencing. So it was really good to have someone to talk to at the end of the day. So, but also, I mean, he's really talented. When we were shooting, we were he and me. We didn't have on any other crew, and we worked like under very, let's say, like tired conditions. But we were really pleased to be part of each journey that we did together.
Gabriel, let me ask you, as the film's producer, what it was about this project that attracted you, and what you saw in Gian that was enabled him to pull off a very tough assignment.
Hi, thanks for having us. Well, as Jan said, when he came to us, he was already in the middle of shooting. He had a lot of footage of his family. He wasn't making a few rough cuts, trying to see where the film was going. And I've known him for many years before that. And I think obviously the story is very interesting for everyone. I mean, it's we all have families, as you said. We all have dysfunctional families at some point, some more than others, and we can see ourselves in this story one way or another. No, and what I admire most of Jan and his whole process is how he was able to be like Jan, the filmmaker, telling us this complex story. But at the same time, he was Jan, the son, the grandson, and the brother, and he was making us feel part of the story, part of his family through his eyes, through his voice, and by getting to know all his family and how they relate to each other, and the dynamic that they have, and that makes a whole story and very beautiful told, because he has a very good cinematographic eye and a way to tell the story, but also, I mean, he's part of it. I mean, he's in the middle of the story. So that ability to distinguish himself, not as a character, but also as a filmmaker, and be able to do it without hesitation through this long process. I mean, that's something that's very appealing for the film and for Gian himself.
Gian, as I wrap this up, you described that one of the things that set you off on this journey was a larger cultural context of what was happening in Mexico at the time. And, I feel like your film is provoking a conversation around cultural attitudes about men and women, and how we perform these identities, and questions about machismo and toxic masculinity. And I wonder, how much you see those kinds of conversations taking place in Mexico, if you see those conversations taking place, or if you think that your film, how your film fits in those conversations.
Well, I think that it's the proper time for this conversation. I mean, now with all these feminist moves that are happening all around the world, which are directing the eye to all these mothers that are left behind. And I mean, also we see now, I mean, in another context, for instance, that mothers are the one who are looking for their sons who are disappeared. instead of the authorities. So I think that this is making public, and it's they constant that we are that we are leaving them alone, so that we need to focus our eyes on what on their own struggle. And I mean, and we are quite aware that, as you mentioned, the machismo, it's like it's always been there, and all this toxic masculinity. And I think that it is the time, thanks to this movement, in which the film, I think that it fits perfectly. I mean, when we were talking, I mean, just for saying, when we were discussing the title name and we thought about Land of Lost Fathers, a feminist friend of mine told me, like, I think it goes perfectly because the context is like that, and yes.
Well, Gian, Gabrielle, Yvonne, I thank you so much for your work on this film. I thank you for the honor of Tiff being able to show its world premiere, and we look forward to watching this film go out into the world.
Thank you. We are quite excited for that.